5 participants are listed at the top of video call, including host, Lordy Lela, and Guy Oliveri. A symbol of a person next to the list says, +8. Below, a presentation slide has the seal for the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the upper left corner. The slide says, Unlocking Section 3 Potential. Effective Strategies for Procurement and Contractor Management. December 10, 2024, 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. EST. In a photo on the slide, a man and a woman in helmets and high-vis vests stand on a job site, looking at a laptop screen. In the participant list at the top, Andalyn Nesbitt Rodriguez appears in a small video call tile.
Right, thank you so much. Welcome everyone to the Unlocking Section 3 Potential, Effective Strategies for Procurement and Contractor Management webinar. My name is Andalyn Nesbitt Rodriguez. I'm with ICF and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. Next slide, please.
Text, Agenda. Welcome and Icebreaker. Effective Strategies for Procurement and Contractor Management. Procurement and Vendor Management. Finding Section 3 Business Concerns. Providing Technical Assistance. Q&A Resources.
Today we're going to first go through a few quick interactive questions, which will hopefully give us a sense of who's in the room and what questions you might have around strengthening your Section 3 strategies for procurement and contractor management. Then we're going to hear from a number of experienced professionals who have had success with procurement, contractor management, vendor management, and finding Section 3 business concerns. And they're going to share their strategies, which have been proven effective. We're going to have opportunities for Q&A throughout the session, so I strongly encourage you to input any questions into the Q&A box, so not the chat box. We won't be able to see those. That's just for the WebEx host, but input those into the Q&A box along the way so that we can be sure to answer as many of those questions as possible. Next slide, please.
Text, Resources. HUD Section 3 Resources. https://www.hud.gov/section3. HUD Exchange Section 3 Resources. https://www.hudexchange.info/program/section-3/. Do you have technical Section 3 questions? Ask a Section 3 question. https://www.hudexchange.info/program-support/my-question/. Do you need more in-depth technical assistance? Request in-depth program assistance. https://www.hudexchange.info/program-support/technical-assistance/.
So please know that today's webinar is really meant to focus on procurement, contractor management, vendor management, and finding those Section 3 business concerns. If you have general technical or program-specific questions about Section 3, please utilize these resources to get those answers rather than putting those Section 3 program-specific questions in the Q&A box. There are Section 3 resources on both HUD.gov and the HUD Exchange, and we'll put those links in the chat box now so that you can grab them if you need them. You're able to ask a question through the Section 3 Ask a Question desk, and you can request more in-depth technical assistance through the HUD Exchange as well. So again, we're going to put those links in the chat box now. Certainly, if you have procurement, contractor, vendor, Section 3 business concern questions, then please go ahead and do input those into the Q&A box because we definitely want to make sure that we get those answered during today's session. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now let's go over to Mentimeter. You can go to Mentimeter by opening a new browser window or by pulling up your smartphone and going to your browser window there. Type in menti.com, so that's menti.com. Again, menti.com, and enter the code 39446320.
Text, let's go to Mentimeter. Open a new browser window, type in menti.com. Enter code 39446320. When you are logged in, hit the thumbs up button. An icon shows the thumbs up symbol. To the right of the text, a phone screen and a photo is open to menti.com. A field says, please enter the code, with a submit button below. The numerical keyboard is open on screen.
You should see that box asking for a code and enter that code 39446320. I see some thumbs up already. That's great. When you're logged in, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button so we know that you're in and ready to begin.
Participants on the call are briefly listed before the question appears.
All right. And yeah, okay, so starting with our first question here, What is the best gift you've ever given or received?
Text below the question says, 4 responses. A word cloud says, hello, hey, smile. Thumbs up icons float up from the bottom right corner. An icon of a person in the bottom right corner says, 46. The number of responses ticks up as more words enter the colorful word cloud.
Just to kind of get to know who's in the room and so the best gift that you've ever given or received. I think for me, my father at one point got me a set of a string of pearls, which I love and I just hold really dearly to my heart. So, oh yeah, I see an engagement ring. That's certainly certainly one. My children, my daughter is absolutely the best gift of my life. So I understand that. Time, the gift of time. That's really an insightful answer, and um, I can't think of anything that's more important than time.
Text, 64 responses. Other terms in the cloud now include, children, vacation, cat fence in, a raincoat when I was 7, hand-picked flowers, hug, designer bag, understanding, and Dyson vacuum among others.
Let's see here. Love, children, um, hand-picked flowers. That's beautiful. Would love hand-picked flowers. Oh, someone got a puppy. I see a puppy there. And of course, money. Always great just to give money and then I can buy what I want. All right. Concert tickets.
The cloud continues to shift as more terms join. Large words at the center of the cloud remain: smile, love, children, and time. The number of responses reaches into the 80s.
Fabulous. Lots of, oh, a photo album. That's such a wonderful gift idea. So we're coming up on the holidays, and if you give gifts for the holidays, a photo album, wow, with some pictures in there is a great idea. Thank you all. All right, let's move on to our second question now. Um, in which state is your agency located? You should be able to take your cursor and either pin yourself on the map here, or if you're on your smart device, then you can probably hit it or a touch screen. Just tap that there.
A U.S. map, divided into 10 color-coded regions, appears below the question. Large blue dots hover over the map, most blank but some that read, 2, over California, Texas, and Georgia, and one that reads, 4, over Pennsylvania. More dots appear, as the numbers on other dots tick upward.
Really interesting to see kind of who's in the room, what HUD regions are represented. I just saw South Carolina pop up, and hello, I'm from South Carolina as well, so glad that you're here. Um, all right. Looks like we have a really strong mix of folks just throughout the country. We've seen in some webinars, some areas kind of leading, and this is really a steady mix here. So very cool. I'll give just a couple more seconds here for folks to pin themselves on the map.
Thumbs up icons float up again from the lower right. The person icon says, 74. Numerous blue dots now all over the map, sometimes multiple dots per state. The Pennsylvania dot now says, 6, while others in California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, Michigan, and Maine say, 2, 3, and 4. No dots hover over Alaska, Hawaii, or other non-contiguous U.S. territories.
NorCal, I think that means North California. See, I'm from South Carolina. I'm not from there, but welcome, welcome. Oh, I see some folks putting some information in New Jersey. Fabulous. Thank you all. All right. Let's move on to our next question here. All right. So, what's the biggest challenge you face in meeting Section 3 goals so far when it comes to your vendor management? And, either hiring and training Section 3 workers, contracting with those Section 3 business concerns, maybe it's documenting and reporting efforts. I see that one seems to be in the lead right now, pretty by far.
Below the question, bars shift in size, one vertical bar for each answer choice. Numbers tick up on each bar as more responses come in. The answer, hiring and training Section 3 workers, sits at 5. Contracting with Section 3 businesses sits at 8. Documenting and reporting efforts reaches 24. Other sits at 1.
And it's growing. And then other, we're going to have a slide in a moment where you can let us know if you hit other or if you just want to expound on your answers here. It looks like a lot of people are having challenges with documenting and reporting efforts. So that's really great for us to know and for HUD to know. Thank you. That number is growing. I think it's clear. Okay.
Now, the answer, hiring and training Section 3 workers, sits at 21. Contracting with Section 3 businesses sits at 30. Documenting and reporting efforts is at 60. Other sits at 7.
Let's go to the next question then here. And here you can type. This is a longer response for you to be able to type. If you put other, please let us know what are your challenges. And if you want to just elaborate a little bit on uh, your challenges, even if it was one of the options that we had on the last screen, please do.
The question reads, what is the biggest challenge you face in meeting Section 3 goals when it comes to vendor management? Thumbs up icons float up from the lower right. Text responses begin to appear below the question.
Verifying compliance. Okay. Verifying compliance. Finding opportunities. General contractor compliance. Good. We hope that we're going to answer lots of these questions and give you more of a base here today. Subcontractors that don't want to cooperate. Um, Compliance. Let's see here. Proper documentation and tracking of labor hours. Um, all right. Let's see here.
Andolin scrolls down the responses appearing below the question. Text, 44 responses. Some of the responses include, finding them. Vendors aren't hiring. Making them understand the Section 3 requirements. Getting signatures from subcontractors. Proper documentation/tracking of labor hours. Verifying compliance. Vendors aren't hiring Section 3 workers.
I know tracking of labor hours, we may speak to that some today, but during our last session, and these webinars will all be posted within the next few weeks on the HUD Exchange, you might want to take a look at our last session where Laura Lind with the Idaho Housing and Finance Association told us about her labor hours tracking form, and that is on their website, and that might be a really good tool for you. Okay, teaching vendors what Section 3 is. We're definitely going to get to that today. Absolutely. Small county with few vendor choices. Hopefully, we'll give you some ideas today. Training and education, cooperation, documentation, getting people to fill out the certification forms. Gotcha. Okay, looks like there's just a lot of general compliance, contractor compliance, documentation. Absolutely. And we hope that we answer so many of these questions today and give you guys some good ideas to make this all easier for you. Getting weekly payrolls. Okay.
63 responses are now in. Some of them include, the short due date after the close of a quarter when there are so many projects to report. Understanding what we, as a city, can require when it comes to procurement process. Also, having contractors understand Section 3 better. Non-cooperative general contractor. Contractors not cooperating in documentation.
Wonderful. So we're going to go back to the presentation now, but please continue. If you're still in Mentimeter, this isn't going to shut off. You can continue to put your challenges in there because this is really good information for us and for HUD. All right, if we can move forward to the next slide, please. We're going to go ahead and jump into our discussion. So I'd like to start by introducing our speakers for today.
The interstitial slide that says, discussion, has a photo of a neighborhood street from above.
If we could move forward to the next slide. All right, thank you so much.
Text, speakers. 3 speakers smile in headshots above their names and titles. Text, Laura Lind, Home Programs Grant Specialist 3. Idaho Housing and Finance Association. IHFA. SONE. Dovian. Section 3 and MBE/WBE Compliance Administrator, Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, HACLA. Katarina Jackson, HR and Payroll Specialist, Section 3 Compliance Portrait Construction.
So with us, again, we have Laura Lind returning. Laura is a home program grant specialist for Idaho Housing and Finance Association. Laura is responsible for administration of the home ARP, NSP, and housing trust fund programs. She also handles internal software administration. She provides technical assistance, quality assurance, regulatory guidance, and training for internal staff and for external partners. Laura's been the point person on Section 3 and has been instrumental in establishing the formal procedures. Like I mentioned before, forms for the developers to use on the projects, and establishing a full section on the Idaho Housing Finance Association website for reference materials on Section 3. So really great website. We're going to put that link up at the end of today's session. And we thank Laura for coming back with us again. We also have Sonae Devan. Sonae, welcome back again, is a Section 3 and minority and women-owned business enterprise compliance administrator with the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles. Sonae has been an integral part of developing HACLA, the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles. We're going to call them HACLA throughout today's session. So Sine has been an integral part of developing HACLA's Section 3 program since in 2014. Since then, she's overseen the program and is responsible for ensuring Section 3 compliance agency-wide, including working with businesses and ensuring that local Section 3 workers are provided with those employment and other economic opportunities. Welcome back, Sonae. We also have with us today Katarina Jackson. She goes by Kat. She is a HR and payroll specialist and Section 3 compliance for Portrait Construction. She's been there since June of 2022. She serves in addition to her role in human resources and payroll, Kat began working with Section 3 compliance, helping to ensure that the company meets all the regulatory and community-related compliance requirements. So welcome. All right.
On the next slide, 3 more speakers grin in their photos. Text, Laura Lela, Supervisor, Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability, New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA. Guy Oliveri, VP Procurement Policy and Performance Management, New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA. Christina Gencarelli, Deputy Director, Vendor Diversity Department, New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA.
Next, we have Laura Delela. She is a supervisor for the Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability, which is called REASE, for New York City Housing Authority. That's NYCHA. Laura joined NYCHA 29 years ago and has worked with REASE job generation unit since 2001. She currently oversees a team of recruitment coordinators who are responsible for connecting qualified NYCHA residents to economic opportunities generated by NYCHA vendors. She also works closely with NYCHA Procurement Department and the Administration Department to review and approve those Section 3 and resident economic opportunity plans prior to contract award. So welcome. We also have with us from NYCHA, Guy Oliveri. Guy joined NYCHA in March of 2022 and is the Vice President of Procurement Policy and Performance Management in the Supply Management and Procurement Department. Guy leads the expansion and strengthening of vendor diversity through the HUD Section 3 and Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program. Guy works to improve procurement accountability and visibility for NYCHA staff and vendors through business processes, technology, and other initiatives. Lastly, but not least, we have Christina Gencarelli. She's the director of NYCHA's Vendor Diversity Department with over 15 years of experience working at NYCHA. And she is responsible for tracking and monitoring vendor compliance with NYCHA's Section 3 and the Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise requirements. Thank you all for being here today. We look forward to the discussion. And with that, I am going to, if we could move to the next slide. Go ahead and we're going to move into our first discussion topic for today, and that is procurement and vendor management. Procurement is an important tool that can be leveraged to help grantees meet Section 3 goals. So today we have Laura Sonae Devan, and Laura Delela here, and they're going to talk to us about their organization's use of procurement and how they manage vendors to meet those Section 3 goals. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Laura Lind with the Idaho Housing and Finance Association. Laura?
The procurement and vendor management intro slide has a black and white photo of a man and woman in protective eye gear hovering over a work table with a plank of wood.
Thank you. There we go.
Laura appears in a small video call tile above the presentation. The lower right corner of her presentation has the logo for the Idaho Housing and Finance Association. Text, considerations for unique organizations. Limited choices in contractors. Willingness to work with federal program requirements. Undocumented workers. administrative burden, lack of skilled labor/availability, competition for labor, poor bookkeeping practices, distance, size of projects.
The first thing I wanted to talk about is those considerations when you are a state agency and there's very limited choices in contractors. Uh, some of the problems or issues that we see is in limited choice. Some of the contractors may not be willing to work with the federal program requirements. And I listed a couple of things here. Uh, with Section 3, we go with self-certification, and we require our contractors to keep their own documentation on whether or not their employees are meeting the AMI requirements for Section 3 based on where they live. But some of our contractors, especially in small rural areas, they don't necessarily keep very good paperwork. And I think that's pretty common as far as maybe not having, documented workers. If they're small enough of a contractor, the administrative burden of federal programs, of the forms that we created to make this easier on them, it's still something that they can look at and go, well, I've got 5 other job opportunities that don't require this administrative burden, or I can take this one and try and get all of this paperwork through. Even if they do decide to work in low-income housing with us, we find that often those smaller contractors give us the most hardship when it's asking for forms, documentation, or um, copies of paperwork. Uh, the next point here, again, lack of skilled labor and availability. If we have a very competitive market as far as contractors, labor, pricing, we're going to find that there's just not that many people that are going to bid on our projects. Um, Distance. While we do a lot of multifamily construction, we also have a single family project. And that is maybe 2 hours away from the downtown area. And getting any qualified contractor willing to do the work, to go 2 hours away can be hard. So again, considerations are the size of the project, the distance from skilled labor, and trying to get people who will work with us and with the requirements. Next slide.
Text: Developers must maintain oversight to ensure contractor performance. Identify and define procurement standards up front. How procurement will be approached prior to construction and during construction.
So this one here, we're talking about that developers keeping their oversight. I think that since our main partner is going to be our developer, they're going to identify the unique challenges in the area that the project is going to be in. So when they come in and apply for funding, they're going to be telling us up front in their developer plan what their procurement standard, what their approach is going to look like. We want them to take a good hard look at where are you going to be getting your labor from? Uh, what are the methods that you're going to go out and try to find qualified contractors to come in here to stay at the budget that you're, initial budget you're proposing. And I think that that is really that identification, define what procurement looks like. I mean, we have our standards as far as micro purchases, small purchases under 100,000 or contracts under 100,000. But, having the developer say, yeah, we're going to reach at least 4 qualified contractors before we make a determination on who's going to be coming in to do the work here. Um, Tell us as an agency what you plan to do so that we know what that oversight is going to look like and we can follow up with that. Next slide.
Text: Coordination. Developed a sample developer plan. Detailed training on use of IFA-specific forms and requirements.
As I said, one of the things we require is a developer plan, and we provide a copy of a sample developer plan for our contractors or developers to take a look at and then use. We require in a response to our NOFAs that they have a developer plan in place, um, detailing out what they're going to do for outreach, for procurement, giving us all those specifics so we know exactly, what we're kind of getting into before we award any kind of funding or go down that road. And then again, we provide detailed training on our forms and our requirements. This happens in pre-construction calls usually, where we'll get into the call with generally the developer and the general contractor and go over the forms, specifically if anyone's new to those forms and requirements now. But talking about uh, what we require, walking through what they need to pass down to the smaller subcontractors, and really being available to answer questions. That's helped kind of take away the fear level, I think, that we've seen as smaller contractors kind of come in and don't know what is expected or how to meet those requirements. So that's been key for us. Next. So required forms, like I said, developers must submit a developer plan. They're going to identify their primary contact, and that's really for them and us. I want to know if we're not getting the forms that are required or they're improperly filled out, who is going to be available to take that call? Whose job is it to work with the subcontractors to get those forms so that, we're not going 10 days without paying a repayment because we can't find someone to answer the question. So identify that primary contact, identify the prioritization method to meet the benchmarks. Um, and we went into section 3 understanding we may not meet benchmarks, and so because outreach starts at the beginning, not at the end, we want them to identify those planned outreach effort methods and the procurement policy right up front, and kind of give us that early start on making sure everyone's clear on their responsibilities. I have a developer certification form, and I know that's there. We also have a contractor certification form, um, and then we have labor hour tracking forms for both the contractors to use, and then the developers kind of pull them all together to submit to us for reimbursement. So I think that the required forms have really been a big deal for us. That has been kind of a method to help everyone know what's expected and to keep it, to give them the tools to be successful in getting us what we need to comply with the program. Next.
Text, securing commitments.
So, like I said here, there's no negotiation on Section 3 requirements. It is a minimum threshold. So, if a developer is applying for funds, they are required to tell us how they're going to meet the documentation, um, and the efforts required to do that. So, um, again, upfront and early, it's a minimum threshold. If they don't, then we can't really consider the project viable. So yeah, no negotiation on that. It's tell us how you're going to do this, um, right up front. Is that my last one?
Text, benchmark projections and identifying opportunities. Developers are coached on the benchmarks and requirements for outreach. Developer plan with examples of outreach efforts to be performed provided to IFA with the initial application.
Ah. Yeah, sorry. Developers, yeah, coaching on the benchmarks and requirements for outreach. Again, in our sample developer plan, and that's on our website, we give examples of outreach efforts that they can use. I think we do give our developers and contractors the ability to kind of say, here's what we can do, and that's really important in smaller rural communities, because not everyone's going to have the same opportunities. Some smaller communities are a lot more, you know, close with each other, and they can pass out a flyer. Some communities are much larger and they rely more on technology to send email broadcasts or reach out to, some of our housing to see if they can find workers. So I think that giving enough ability for our developers to make their own determinations and kind of tell us what they have in mind has been good. Allowing, giving them guidelines and then helping them, not just pick one or two, but kind of reach a little further and go, we can do more to at least do the outreach that we're going to need to try and find workers for this project in the communities that we're serving. Um, and those examples, we give them, and then we help give them examples on what that would look like. So one of the things I like to tell everyone is take a photo, because um, you can say you posted a sign, but a photo tells me a lot more. What they say, a photo is worth 1,000 words. A photo of you posting your outreach or going to job fairs or doing things is worth more to me, and I hope it's worth more to HUD, than just, writing a bullet point on your developer plan that says that you're going to be doing that.
Text, certification strategies.
Certification. Contractors are required to self-certify their Section 3 status, and the known status of their workers in their employment. I think that that was a key provision in the Section 3 guidelines, is that we can accept self-certification, which means that, uh, at least for IHFA, um, I don't want to be asking for every individual worker's um, you know, personal information on their wages and whatnot. And so accepting self-certification from the contractor who in all respects is getting paid to do this work. They're going to have their bookkeeping, or they at least they should. They're going to know roughly where the worker is living, so they can take a look at the AMI for the area that the employee is working. We provide a form to help them go through an annual certification of income for each employee that might be working on a project, to help them kind of build that database of, here's all of our workers, here's the ones who are or are not Section 3, are they targeted, are they in the area of the project, so that when they go to fill out those Section 3 labor hour forms, it's should be just as simple as, here's our time cards, and yes, they are or are not Section 3 workers. And then taking their word for it, they sign a form with every reimbursement that says that they're certifying those hours are true. Again, forms are on our site. You guys can take a look at those. But I think that that's really, from our standpoint, the best we can ask for. Um, and then we ask that they maintain their records for at least 5 years after project completion, just in case we have to request anything down the line, should we go into a deep audit or something like that.
Text, strategies for collecting labor hours. Developers are required to submit on a per-draw basis unless otherwise stated in their developer plan. Developer compiles and submits labor hours and contractor certifications. IHFA staff works with developers/contractors to resolve reporting errors. Hold 10% retention until all Section 3 documentation is provided.
Collecting labor hours, this is again identified in our developer plan. So I want the developer to tell us up front, are they going to be submitting their labor hours on a per draw basis? And is that going to be every 2 weeks, every month? Tell us up front what that looks like so that we can kind of plan. Uh, do you want to come in for reimbursement on costs every other month? In which case, we're going to be looking for the billing and we're going to be looking for 2 months worth of labor hours. But I think the key here is, again, to tell us as the agency what that's going to look like so that we understand what we're looking for to be compliant in our own program. Um, we have, like I said, a labor hour form for the contractor to fill out uh, on those whatever basis when they come in for reimbursement. And then our developer kind of combines all of those and they submit that to us at IHFA so that we can then take a look at those and verify to some extent, what's kind of going on. And let's say they say, on the first draw that staff employee number 110 is section 3, but a month later 110 is claimed as not section 3. That can happen, and then we have staff that will work with our developers and contractors to resolve some of those errors and kind of go, hey, the same business reported them as section 3 here, but they didn't report them there, or vice versa, and let's clean up these forms a little bit so that they flow better. Of course, we hold a 10% retention on the entire project to make sure that we have documentation prior to coming to the end of it. Um, I, I think that that is really big too. I'm just going to say that chasing down a small contractor 6 months after they were on the job to try and collect labor hours is nobody's best day. Um, it's difficult. They won't answer the phone. I've tried. So what does seem to catch them is when you refuse to pay them. They do kind of like to be paid for their work, and so if you make collecting your forms a requirement of repayment, you seem to get a lot further. And of course, the 10% retainage is, in my opinion, a little bit more for the developer who is going to be wanting that, and then you can get the final forms and stuff from them at that point. Right. Next, documenting best efforts.
Text. Refer to the IHFA-approved developer plan for identified outreach efforts and collect all supporting documentation.
Again, outreach, we have our developers identify what their outreach plan is going to look like right up front. And that just means, are you going to post a sign? Are you going to send notification to, how many quotes are you going to try and get? How many what's the area that you're working in, and are there any low-income housing in the area that you can try and reach workers? Are you attending job fairs? Tell us what you're doing so that we can approve that plan up front, work with you on those outreach efforts, and then know what we're collecting. If you say you're going to go to a job fair, then show me evidence that you did that. And I think that keeping communication clear between everybody, between us, our developers, our partners, all the contractors about what is required that, to satisfy the outreach efforts and then document and prove is really the biggest deal. And so being clear at that early stage, talking about it, collecting the paperwork, and a lot of that happens even before you break ground. So keep that in mind, start early and make sure that you understand what you're looking for from your partners. And I guess with that, I'll pass it on to Sone.
Sone appears in a video call tile above the presentation. Her presentation has the HACLA logo in the lower right corner. Text, coordination. Identify key staff in the procurement process. Require Section 3 sign-off during solicitation development phase. Incorporate Section 3 clause and Section 3 language in contract templates. Review Section 3 EOP, bids/proposals, prior to contract award. Include Section 3 language in Board of Commissioner reports for contract awards. Below the text are two images, depicting 2 pages of a procurement request form. The first page of the form has the heading, Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles Procurement Request Form. The upper part of the forms has fields, including project title, requesting department, contact person, and location of work. The middle section of the page has questions with checkboxes next to answer choices. The bottom of the page has the heading, Instructions for Use, and lists email addresses in blue link text within the info text. The second page of the form is divided into 5 sections of fields and questions with checkboxes. A signature sits in the top section. Both pages of the form are displayed in a small size, rendering most of the text illegible.
Well, thank you for that, and good morning, everyone. As HACLA's Section 3 administrator, I'm involved in every step of the contract monitoring process for our agency. And in our agency, Section 3 process starts at the very step of procurement and does not end until project closeout. That includes working with department staff as they're putting together the solicitation, signing off on Section 3 applicability, ensuring that bids and proposals received are in compliance with our requirements and HUD requirements, reviewing them, incorporating them into our contracts, and only after the contracts are executed, then we start the monitoring process. So it's a long process that involves many steps, and I will try to cover each of those steps in the next few slides. What you see on your screen is the procurement request form that we use. I believe it is unique to our agency because what we do with this form is before we start anything on procuring anything, issuing any solicitation, the procuring department completes this form, submits it along with ICE and scope of work, and asks all stakeholder departments to sign off. Like finance will sign off that we have enough budget for it. IT will sign off if it requires any IT work. Labor compliance officer will sign off on applicable wages. Project managers will sign off on any licensing that may be required for contractor to perform the work. And of course, then I will sign in as a Section 3 administrator, identifying if the project is subject to Section 3 requirements. And if it is, then whether it is public housing guidelines or HCD guidelines that are going to apply. And that is going to trigger the process.
Text, Challenges and Successes. Challenges. Internal staff was hesitant in creating the additional steps. Tracking contracts for Section 3 applicability in a decentralized contracting process. Successes. Importance of Section 3 as a policy of HACLA from Executive Office and Board of Commissioners. Processes to streamline and create efficiency.
So when we introduced this process, everyone was a little hesitant because it was creating an additional step. And, every time we're changing something, the first instinct is that, is this necessary? We don't want to add any unnecessary complicating steps. But it took a lot of communication and explaining with our departments to bring them on board. And what really helped us overcome this and make sure that Section 3 is at the core of our procurement process is the support from HACLA executive staff and our Board of Commissioners, their constant reiteration how Section 3 is very important for this agency, and not just imposing these requirements, but also making sure that the departments know that there is support for them from the contracts and procurement department, mainly myself as the Section 3 compliance administrator, to help them through this process, that it wasn't their responsibility, rather our responsibility, but they need to keep us informed in the process.
Text, IFB and RPF process. Invitations for bid. Section 3 exhibit submission requirement. Must include a clear commitment to satisfy Section 3 obligations. Request for proposals. Section 3 exhibit submission requirement. Commitment evaluated and scored per specific guidelines, must be fair and same for all proposers on all RFPs. Opportunity in BOFO stage to revise the commitment. Section 3 commitments incorporated into contract and monitored for compliance. In a photo on the slide, 10 people gather outside near a hedge.
So once that was set, then everything just flowed and it was just streamlined. So what we do is, going back to our processes, after that PRF form is signed, we issue then the solicitation with the appropriate templates, the requirements and clauses in the contract. In case of an invitation for bid, the Section 3 exhibit is attached to it, and bidders need to submit that Section 3 exhibit with their bids, clearly providing commitments on hiring or economic opportunities that they'll be able to provide to Section 3 workers, and signing off on some of the forms that lists the HUD labor hour benchmark goals and all their other obligations should they be awarded a contract. In the case of requests for proposals, RFPs, it's a little bit more complicated because it's an evaluation process. So once we receive the proposals, I review the Section 3 portion of the proposal and assign a score to them. And based on that score and all the other scores assigned for the other parts of the RFP, then if the contractor goes to the BOFO process, the best and final offer, we have an opportunity to clear and change the Section 3 commitments and obligations in that BOFO process. Once we have that clear commitment of Section 3 and we have the selected awardee, then we will prepare a Board of Commissioners report. And Board of Commissioners report templates for our agency have a Section 3 part. And regardless of the procurement, every board report has a paragraph on Section 3 that we will need to explain if it's applicable, if it's not. And if it is applicable, then we need to explain what was done and what's going to be done when they're awarded the contract. And once the Board of Commissioners approves that contract, then we will work on executing the contract, and that EOP form, the Section 3 exhibit, is going to be attached to the contract as an exhibit to make sure that it's part of their contractual obligations.
Text, required forms. 1. HACLA Form Bank. Section 3 Economic Opportunity Plan, EOP. Submitted with bids/proposals. Incorporated into contract as an exhibit. Used to track progress and monitor contractor compliance with regulations and specific commitments made in the EOP. 2. Job Order Form, to request assistance in identifying Section 3 workers for hiring. 3. Section 3 Worker Certification Form, to be completed by Section 3 worker and employer. 4. Compliance Reporting Forms. To the right of the text, 2 images depict 2 pages of a form. The first page has the heading, Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles Section 3 Economic Opportunity Plan. After dense info text at the top of the first page, contact fields sit below. On the second page, questions appear between 2 large empty tables, the first with 4 columns and 3 rows, and the second with 3 columns and 4 rows.
So that EOP form, or the Section 3 exhibit that I referred to, is our economic opportunity form, and other agencies call it slightly differently. What it does for us is it lists the Section 3 obligations, the labor hour benchmark requirements, qualitative efforts, all of those requirements that are in the HUD CFR or in the HUD guidance. And also the Section 3 business certification form, because we also want to understand if they are a Section 3 business or not. So those are submitted with their bids, incorporated, and the EOP form will be used to track and monitor the contract once the contract is executed. Some of the other forms that we use as an agency is our job order form. So after contract is executed, we will ask the contractors to submit this form. It's basically a job bulletin, job announcement, that they will notify us what positions are available as a result of this contract award, and we can help them with identifying Section 3 workers from the community to hire. And when they do hire our Section 3 residents or workers, then they will submit the Section 3 worker certification form, which will be used to verify that employment, and then eventually the labor hours, etc. And of course, there are compliance reporting forms. Oh, my apologies.
Sine briefly goes to the next slide, then back.
Okay. Of course, there is the Section 3 compliance reporting form that the contractors are submitting. And an interesting fact I will share with you so you understand one size does not fit all is we started initially as a PDF form for our compliance reporting forms, but we soon realized that it doesn't work because some of the contractors have a lot of staff and there's a lot of data that's shared, and it was just hard for us to transfer from PDF to an Excel to verify labor hours calculated, etc. So we now switched to an Excel form. Some of the fields are password protected, so they cannot change it, but we have a nice template now where they just enter all of the information, yes and no, the hours worked, and the Excel will calculate the labor hours, so it makes it easier for us to verify and track the information. And this comes helpful and handy, especially when we're dealing with a contractor who has a staff of like 50, 60 employees, so we don't have to go through line by line and manually enter the hours to calculate.
Text, ensuring contractors understand the forms. Partnership and communication, website materials. Clear instructions on the forms/solicitations. Pre-bid conferences. Notification emails. Pre-construction conferences, mandatory for new vendors, optional for existing. Misunderstandings, definitions and not identifying S3 and TS3 workers accurately. Not following hiring priorities. Not keeping record and inability to provide required reporting forms. In a photo to the right of the text, a man addresses a meeting room full of people. TV monitors hang about the room, displaying white text against a blue background.
Ensuring contractors understand the forms and the processes can be very challenging. As much as we'd like to think that our process is streamlined, it's efficient, it's easy, it is oftentimes daunting for contractors, especially small businesses. So some of the strategies that we use to help them and guide them through this process is first having a lot of information on our website and updating that when applicable. We'll refer them to those pages to download the fillable forms, etc. I participate in pre-bid conferences. I spoke about the IFBs and RFPs earlier. So not only we include those exhibits in the forms and the solicitations, but I also go and participate in those pre-bid conferences. So prior to even bidding, contractors who came to the pre-bid conference, they will hear me speak, they will hear what our requirements are, what our expectations are, they can ask me questions, and that helps us and achieves two purposes. First, it communicates to them that Section 3 is an important part of our contracting process at HACLA. And also when we are receiving the bids and proposals, those forms are completed and accurate, so then we don't have to go back and forth and correct those forms. Once the contracts are executed and awarded, I send our contractors a notification email listing them all the requirements, definitions, the qualitative efforts that they need to engage in, remind them of the labor hour benchmark calculations. We have a image, visual of how to calculate that to make it easier for them. And of course, a point of contact who to reach out to for questions, which will essentially be myself or another individual in our office. And at that time, we offer them a pre-construction call. So new contractors will always go through a call where we will just review all of those requirements, pull up all the forms that need to be completed as part of the monitoring and compliance process, and we will just do a mock process of them filling out the form to make sure that they understand exactly what needs to be done. For returning contractors, this process is optional. They oftentimes take it if they have new staff, if they're already comfortable with it, they have done this in the past, we can skip it, but at least they have that notification email in writing. And our program is always evolving. We make some small tweaks and changes to our forms and processes based on the response that we get from our vendors. We don't change a lot. We're not there to just constantly change and confuse everyone. But for example, when I hear a question from one contractor and then that same question keeps coming up with other contractors, or I receive compliance reports with the same errors from different contractors, then we start reviewing our internal processes and think that maybe our instructions are not clear. Maybe the form could be amended and we can rework this slightly differently to make it easier for them. So in those instances, we change it. And then of course we have to change it wherever we have the income limits noted or other annual changes that happen, right?
Text, strategies for collecting labor hours.
You know, filling out forms and collecting the documents is always challenges. It's one of the hardest things. I think we can all agree to get contractors to submit documentations. And to help them with the process, we rely on a variety of methods. What we do is we ask them either to submit monthly reports or quarterly reports. And that's agreed upon based on the contract length and the scope of work that they are doing. We allow our contractors to attach their payroll or other time and attendance record as applicable. Some of you may know that large contractors use LCP trackers, so that's a good documentation to submit. Other small businesses may not have that, so they will submit their own internal other payroll documents and spreadsheets or any other template that they use or programs. And others will just simply certify it because they just do it manually, and that's okay as long as we have their certification and signature on the forms. And as I mentioned, we use Excel as the compliance report form to easily calculate and verify the data. And, there are always some challenges. Strategies are always different based on the project. Small businesses have administrative challenges, so we help them. And oftentimes we just get on the phone with them and walk them through the process and help them to complete the forms. There's also a lot of back and forth and asking them to correct and highlighting and redlining things. But it's a process, and we walk through with them on the process and help them because we definitely want to do business with small businesses too. So we want to help them with the process. We don't want them next time to feel overwhelmed and not bid on our projects.
An additional challenge listed reads, large projects with multiple subs require a lot of data collection and verification.
Other challenges are privacy concerns often that our businesses and vendors express that they do not want to share their employee information because it involves, their name and address and pay rate, hire date, etc. So in those cases, we may allow them to list the employee, not the full names, but maybe the first name and last name, first letter, or employee number, etc. So we will work with them as long as there is enough backup documentation to verify and accurately assess the labor hours performed on the project. Again, so it's all based on a case-by-case basis.
Text, documenting best efforts. Record keeping and good faith efforts. GFE supporting documents attached to compliance reports. Submitted throughout the project and end of the project. GFEs can include but not limited to emails, job orders, and worker referral forms, photos, sign-in sheets from events, narratives. In one photo on the slide, women in helmets and high-vis vests pose outside a white, multi-story building. In another photo, event tents shade tables outside. People mill around the event.
Documenting best efforts. Well, in addition to that qualitative data that we all need to collect, there's also a big push on the qualitative efforts that we work with our contractors to make sure that happens. And contractors attach their good faith efforts to their compliance reports, and we monitor that. So this could include email communications, the job order form I talked about, them submitting us a job order, getting a referral, sending us the interview notes of what happened, why they did not hire a Section 3 worker, or if they hired, whom they hired. A lot of times we ask them to submit photos. I think that came up earlier in some of the other trainings and here too, but photos speak a lot, like it says a lot. So if they submit photos from the project side, that's wonderful. That could be also a best effort documentation, sign-in sheets from participating in various events, and also just a small, simple narrative. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I always say, again, being mindful of administrative challenges for some of the contractors. It can be bullet points, it can be full-on sentences, it can be something very simple in an email or company letterhead, whatever works for that contractor. Just giving us some of the information of what was done and equally important, the challenges that they encountered.
Text, technical assistance for contractors. Support from HACLA, crucial support from HACLA team. Guidance on understanding Section 3 goals. Strategic advice for achieving objectives. Partnerships, collaboration with Power 2 workers. Engagement with CALI compliance. Connecting with Section 3 workers. Impact, meeting Section 3 goals. Strengthening company reputation. Benefiting the community.
And technical assistance for contractors. With that, I will turn it over to Kat Jackson from Portrait Construction. Portrait is the general contractor on one of our large redevelopment projects in Watts. That's an underserved community in South Los Angeles. They're currently doing 2 projects with us, a 76-unit housing building and a 119-unit building. And we asked Kat to join us today to offer her thoughts and her perspective and processes on the program. And honestly, with Kat's direction, Portrait is doing a lot in the community. They participate in a lot of events. They hire a lot of our workers. And I am pleased to introduce you to Kat Jackson, who will speak with you on her experience working with HACLA on a Section 3 applicable project. Kat, please go ahead.
Briefly going to the next slide, then returning to the previous, Kat appears in a video call tile above the slides.
There we go. We are a GC. We work close with HACLA or, the Housing Authority of Los Angeles for a few of our projects. I am fairly new to Section 3, as I stated in the introduction, I've only been here with Portrait Construction since June of 2022, and I started with Section 3 in September of 2022. I was completely new to it. So Sonay and her team have been a tremendous help to me as far as understanding the definitions and the requirements, because each project is different that we're on, and some of the goals have changed throughout our projects. So, whether it was, a phone call or a video call or anything, going over many, many questions. There was no question that, she said, this is not, kind of like a dumb question, but it was, no question was to go unanswered. It was, if you have a question, just go ahead and ask it, and we will be happy to help you in any way that we possibly can. So, Sonae and her team have been a tremendous help with me, supporting me and trying to meet the Section 3 goals for each of our projects. They've offered, valuable advice and provided some strategies that might help us achieve our goals and our objectives for the projects, and as well as, providing guidance to some of our contractors, letting us know what we should say to our subcontractors that are going to be on site or are already on site and not meeting their goals. We also did partner with Power to Workers. They do have a separate entity called Cali Compliance, and they help us meet our Section 3 goals. They are, following up with our subcontractors and, helping them set up interviews with our subcontractors. They are on site, they are stepping foot on the ground out there on our job sites, and they have, built rapport with some of the Section 3 workers that, flow through and in and out of these projects for us. And they connect, with the Section 3 workers, and they help, they are familiar with their resumes. They will help, um, I'm sorry, they will help meet up with our subcontractors and, do the interviews and get them working on site with our section 3 for the Section 3 workers. Okay, so meeting the impact Section 3 goals. There's so many things that we do to meet the goals. The first thing is, collecting the economic opportunity plans from all of our subcontractors. Um, that's the first thing that we do. We learned that collecting it late when the subcontractors have already started on site or they're in the contracting process didn't really work for us. So we started collecting that in the bid process so that we could get um, a goal for them for them, and then also strengthening the company reputation with the community. We are, out there, we go out there and we do job fairs and do things like that. Next slide, please.
Text, contractor efforts to meet Section 3 goals. Comprehensive approach, covering all project phases, estimation, award, buyout. Learning and adapting from past projects. Hiring and training, identifying and addressing challenges. Ensuring success through team evolution. Outreach and advertising, ads in SBE Weekly newspaper. Referring to HACLA's Section 3 business registry. Building relationships, strong ties with committed subcontractors. Familiarity with Section 3 goals and expectations. Collaboration with subcontractors, ensuring Section 3 obligations are met. Hiring new employees and completing eligibility forms. Pre-construction meetings for guidance and examples.
Okay, so as I stated, collecting the economic opportunity plan in, after contract award was not working out for us. So we did start having our estimation team send that out to the subcontractors that were wanting to bid on our projects. It helped us tremendously in our most recent project, and I, highly suggest that something like that be put out, for all projects. So this way that you're getting a commitment beforehand, and, if it came back that they weren't committing to any of, hiring, then we would kick it back and tell them that we can't accept that in the bid. And also, our estimation team would put out, advertisements in the SPE magazine newspaper, that would help, get Section 3 businesses bidding on our projects to help meet some of the goals for the projects. As far as hiring and training, we do our best with what we can, whether it's working with HACLA and they have a worksource center where they can refer candidates and we can see their resumes and we can try and best fit, what, Section 3 worker would go with, what subcontractor would work best with them. Also, the Power to Workers team, they hold meetings at their offices to help train and build skills for the Section 3 workers so that when it comes time for hiring on our subcontractors, they know what worker is best to place for those subcontractors. And overall, our goal is to create opportunities for the Section 3 workers and for the subcontractors to make sure that they're meeting their goals. The outreach and advertising, I stated the SB magazine, that has worked. We have a very good rapport with a lot of Section 3 businesses now to where they're basically returning to each of our projects, whether it's in LA or Orange County or Riverside County. So we have a very good rapport with a lot of the Section 3 businesses. Of course, there's always new ones that come along and some, are better with compliance than others. But if they're a Section 3 business, then they are, their hours are all going to meet the requirement for the projects. And, every project is different as far as the goals. And then HACLA does have a Section 3 business registry. So there is a website, that HACLA has, and we can go on there and view it from time to time. And I can send it to our project management team. If we don't have a drywall company yet, then I can send it to them and be like, take a look at this and let's try and figure out if we can get one of these drywall companies on site, just to get our numbers up, which the Section 3 hours, we don't really have a problem with. It's more so a new hire goal that we face. But, same thing, if there's somebody that's hired then and they're, new to the Section 3 business registry, then it will help the numbers for the project. The strong ties with the committed subcontractors, same thing. We have a rapport with a lot of Section 3 businesses and they return to our jobs. They will ask if we're getting the next phase of our project and, we'll say, yeah, we're bidding it, but we don't know if we're going to be awarded it. But if we do, then, by all means, we will ask you to bid. And that has helped us along the way with a lot of our projects. And then they all are also familiar with the Section 3 goals and expectations. So, it helps that they have already met the goals on one project and they're well aware of what it's going to be for the next project. There might be some change, but, if there's no change, then they're well aware of what the project's goals are. And then collaboration with subcontractors, ensuring Section 3 obligations are met. There's so many things that come into play here. The economic opportunity plans, making the commitment early, holding them accountable for that commitment, whether it's 1 to 2 new hires, making sure they're meeting their hour goals. We try to tell all of our subcontractors to make sure that they're meeting each goal individually so that as a project whole, it's not a burden at the end of the project. So we try to make sure that each subcontractor is, meeting each goal individually rather than trying to make it as a whole project. They're hiring new Section 3 workers. We're trying to place Section 3 workers with them, whether it's, through an apprenticeship, they sponsor them in, or, we know of a union that is hiring and we'll tell them, can we get this guy into your union? We also have pre-construction meetings here. So for all of our projects, just recently, we started this process was having pre-construction meetings with our subcontractors that were, going to be contracted on that project. We try to do it before they're on site. It doesn't always work out that way, but we try to do it before they're on site and just hold a meeting with them and go over all of the guidelines and then give them examples. We kind of made a cheat sheet for them to refer to, just to, meet, so they know the goals and define the definitions for them, because, I know there's a lot of confusion of what the definitions are. So we try to, make that as easy for them to understand as possible. And then we let them know, what we are trying to expect from them, and, the goals, and all the forms. We went over all of the forms and how to complete them, from HACLA. And that is it for that slide.
Text, documenting best efforts for Section 3 compliance. Economic Opportunity Plan, required for all subcontractors. Detailed records of job order forms and referrals. Accountability measures, hiring notes from subcontractors. Documentation of good faith efforts. Outreach expansion, posting flyers at job sites. Engaging local residents for apprenticeship interest. Collecting copies and photos of flyers. Job fairs participation, active involvement in job fairs. Subcontractor participation for interviews and resume collection. Thorough documentation with flyers, sign-in sheets, and event photos. In a picture on the slide, 2 people table at a job fair, sitting under a black event tent outside. 2 other people stand at the booth, which has the HACLA logo on a banner draped from the table.
Okay, I touched on the Economic Opportunity Plan. That comes from HACLA. When we are awarded the projects, we ask all of our subcontractors to fill it out. There are a select few that might not fill it out, and it's usually when it's like a sub tier to one of our subcontractors, and that we're chasing that. We still try and chase it. We do have reporting that we turn into HACLA monthly, and then obviously at the end of the project. And that's kind of a way of us tracking those economic opportunity plans, to make sure that we get them all. And just having, detailed, we collect job order forms from the subcontractors when they're requesting a Section 3 worker. We get them to fill that out, and then we send that over to HACLA's Work Source Center, and they will provide a referral with the best candidates that can, help them meet their Section 3 goals and perform the job. And then we keep record of all of those. Anyone that sends those in, we send it to HACLA, or they send it to HACLA, and then we keep record of it. And it's kind of showing like a good faith effort for them as well, that they are trying to find a Section 3 worker and meet their goals. The referrals is something that comes back from HACLA's Work Source Center. And, like I said, it's got the candidates listed, their information, and there's also like a note section in there for the subcontractor to fill out, whether they interviewed them or they tried calling them and they couldn't reach them. That's, something for them to fill out and return back to us, and us provide to HACLA, so that HACLA has record of it. That again is showing another good faith effort on their part. We don't always get them back, but we do ask for them back, especially if they were unable to hire any of the candidates on the list. Accountability measures, the hiring notes, just like I said on the referral, it's, we ask them all back for them to complete that. We do tell the subcontractors as well that, if there's no candidates on that referral, put an ad out on the job site, hang it up on the fence.
Andalyn reappears in her own video call tile.
You can place multiple, you can place 1, you can place 4, but take pictures of it. Send us a picture of that flyer. Go out on site and talk to, locals, because they are coming on site and asking for jobs. They are asking for work. If you want to go talk to them yourself and interview them on the spot, you're more than welcome to do that. But document it, send us information. Even if you just have their contact information, send us that, and send us the date that you talk to them, and we can turn that in for you for your good faith effort. Whether it's an email or a sticky note, you can send us a picture with a sticky note. Anything, we can save that for you and send that in for you. And then at the end of the project, obviously the subcontractors are going to submit all their good faith efforts on their own. The outreach, I just talked about the job flyers on site, posting those, taking pictures of them, sending us a copy of them, engaging local residents for apprenticeship interest. So this is something that we do on site sometimes, or within the community, we will host some job fairs, and we will have unions out there, or we will have apprenticeship programs out there, and we will ask them to see if they can get sponsored in. Just recently we had somebody be sponsored in for the fire alarm and burglar for one of our subcontractors. Our subcontractor sponsored them in. So it's things like that, talking with the local residents and making sure they're interested, because it is a commitment on their part as well. And then collecting copies of a sign-in sheet, or any whether it's a resume or something, taking photos of the job fairs or the flyers. um, and then, yeah, job fair participation. We ask, some of our subcontractors, we will ask them to come participate, whether they are already on site and not meeting their goals, or if they're going to be starting on site soon. It's best that they, hire before they're ready to start on site. And then this way they are ready to go and they can help meet their Section 3 goals, right off the bat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. There's so much great information that you have to share with us. We appreciate
Thank
all
you.
of that information, and we're going to move forward now to the next slide. We'll turn it over to Laura DeLayla with NYCHA.
Above the presentation, Laura appears in a video call tile from an office.
Hello, my name is Laura DeLilla. I am a supervisor in the Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability REIS office. It's great to be included in the webinar series. I'll talk about how NYCHA reviews its Section 3 and Resident Economic Opportunity REO and other economic opportunity OEO plans.
Laura's presentation has the New York City Housing Authority logo in the lower right corner.
The NYCHA Section 3 and Resident Economic Opportunity Plan, Section 3 and REO, is the contractor's plan for meeting the Section 3 numerical goals and employment and training goals. It is important to note that the Section 3 and REO plan is included as part of the bid document prior to award. The Section 3 and REO plan includes the contractor's projected labor hours for total workforce, Section 3 workers, and targeted Section 3 workers. At a minimum, contractors are expected to project 25% of the total labor hours for Section 3 workers and 5% of the total labor hours for targeted Section 3 workers as per HUD's Section 3 benchmarks. They include plans for recruiting Section 3 workers. An acknowledgement to outreach and recruit Section 3 business concerns for subcontracting opportunities, a designated Section 3 point of contact for the vendor. And it is important to designate a point of contact who is familiar with the projections in the plan and is able to make decisions around job opportunities and hiring. Even if a contractor does not project labor hours worked by Section 3 workers or hiring new employees, the Section 3 and REO plan must be completed. NA is not an acceptable response on the form. The Section 3 and REO plan must be reviewed and approved by NYCHA's REIS office prior to contract award. A bidder may be determined non-responsive if the Section 3 and REO plan is incomplete. And NYCHA REIS can be used as a resource to support vendors around recruitment and outreach. Some of the strategies include connecting with resident leaders to share positions with qualified residents, posting on the REIS website, NYCHA social media sites, as well as flyer distribution and in-person recruitment events or information sessions. We also work closely with REIS workforce development and training partners to connect residents to these opportunities. And note, the contractors are also required to conduct their own outreach. We encourage that strongly. Next slide. So the Section 3 Other Economic Opportunity OEO plan, in the current state, NYCHA Section 3 OEO plan must be completed by a bidder for a professional services contract in excess of $250,000 only if a bidder does not project labor hours for Section 3 workers in the Section 3 and REO plan. Some types of professional service contracts include architectural, engineering, construction management, legal services, accounting, and marketing. The OEO plan must be completed in addition to the Section 3 and REO plan. Other economic opportunities could include establishing training or pre-apprenticeship programs, paid internship programs for Section 3 workers, hiring Section 3 workers outside of the Section 3 covered contract, or providing technical assistance such as business development and management training to help establish or expand a Section 3 business concern. Contractors can utilize existing internship or training opportunities already established within their company, or they can utilize RESA support to build out a program. Next slide. And Section 3 OEO plan in the transitional phase, NYCHA is currently transitioning to follow HUD's guidelines to make OEO optional for professional service vendors. Vendors in a future state may be able to use OEO as an option to satisfy, to the greatest extent feasible, their Section 3 requirement if they are unable to meet compliance under labor hours. And I will now turn it over to Andalyn for Q&A or...
Andalyn reappears. An interstitial slide says, Finding Section 3 Business Concerns. In a black and white photo on the slide, two women in high-visibility vests smile while gesturing at a construction site.
Thank you so much. We're going to move right now into our second segment for today. And this discussion will focus on finding Section 3 business concerns. We have Guy Oliveri, Sonae Devan, and Laura Lind here to discuss strategies their organizations use to find those Section 3 business concerns. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Guy.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone. Thanks very much for inviting NYCHA to come and speak.
Guy appears above the presentation, which still has the New York City Housing Authority logo. His first slide reads, Streamlining Outreach to Section 3 Business Concerns and M/WBE. NYCHA launched comprehensive outreach efforts to establish a new Section 3 Business Concern, S3BC, directory that was compliant with the Section 3 final rule. Implemented new online directory, publicly available to all contractors, with search and extract capabilities. Includes S3BC vendor description, categories of work, and contact information. New directory includes documentation upload requirement and review and approval by NYCHA vendor diversity team. Legacy directory, outreach and sunset. Identified multiple sources and conducted outreach to build new directory.
And thanks to my colleagues in Reese, Laura and Lenise, who are on the call today. Laura just spoke, and we work closely with them, on everything that we do. So I'll start with, streamlining. What we did recently to revitalize our Section 3 business concern registry. We had a legacy registry that was in effect for many years. I think I heard one of the other speakers mention businesses were allowed to self-identify. We noticed some quality issues with that, so we revamped the registry. We maintained the legacy so that folks could still find those businesses if needed. But we created a new registry, and I'll talk about it later, in our online labor compliance system, vendor compliance system, which we use for certified payroll, Section 3 and MW, or minority women-owned business compliance. And we house the new registry there, and Section 3 business concerns are able to apply to be a Section 3 business concern with NYCHA there, upload the required documentation, and that's there's a workflow. It goes to my team, which is Christina Gencarelli and the folks that work with her in the vendor diversity department, and they review and approve the business as a Section 3 business concern. The nice thing about that is that it is in the place where all the contractors are, going now for certified payroll, compliance, and Section 3 and MWBE compliance. So it's the place where they submit their Section 3 plans. This is brand new. It's the place where they submit their labor hours and report their Section 3 labor hours. It's also a place where they submit their MWBE plans, and which is short for Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program. And it's a place where they submit their certified payroll. So it's a place where they will be looking for subcontractors. So in order to build that directory, we did or at least build the directory or the businesses in that directory. We did an extensive outreach there. We've of course outreached our existing, at the time, 300 plus vendors on our existing legacy registry. Turns out that, with a lot of effort, repeated effort, the majority of those vendors, either did not qualify under the new rule or, did not, register for the new, under the new rule to be a Section 3 business concern with NYCHA. So we had to go look at other sources. We did extensive outreach to our own, vendor databases and also to the legacy HUD Section 3 business concern registry for the New York region, which luckily we had a copy, we had maintained a copy of, and we also reached out to other PHAs that were, in the vicinity who might also have registries that we can conduct outreach from. Next slide, please.
Text. NYCHA implemented a Section 3 and M/WBE first policy where preference is given to Section 3 business concerns, S3BCs, and minority and women-owned business enterprises, M/WBEs, over other types of business for all micro and small procurements, in other words, wherever NYCHA has discretion. NYCHA's procurement team built an interactive Power BI dashboard that includes diversity status plus skilled trades, and micro PQL statuses. The dashboard is available for all NYCHA staff to facilitate the identification of S3BCs and M/WBEs. Staff must complete a tracker to document efforts to identify S3BCs and M/WBEs for awards and are trained NYCHA-wide on the policy and tracker usage. Vendors are reminded that 100% of the Section 3 labor hours performed by S3BCs are counted toward the Section 3 benchmarks. NYCHA also has a mandatory M/WBE goals program where prime vendors must subcontract 30% of the total award amount to M/WBEs, and developers must subcontract 25% of applicable costs.
So one of the things that we do, to support Section 3 business concerns and MWBEs, one thing we noticed early on is that a lot of the efforts that we were making for MWBEs, we were also making for Section 3 business concerns. So wherever possible, we try to combine our efforts. So if we're doing, outreach or holding an event or, answering questions, technical questions, we try to open that up, to all of our vendors and try to, consolidate our efforts there. And, I know we're a large housing authority or the largest housing authority, but, we have the same resources constraints that probably everybody else, here today does. So we try to do the most with what we have. We have something called the Section 3 and MWBE first policy. So I know mostly we've been talking about the larger procurements and the subcontracting opportunities, but we also have, a good amount of opportunity in the smaller procurement area, what we call micro purchases. So we have a policy there where we preference Section 3 business concerns and MWBEs first over other businesses. And when our departments are looking for vendors on these smaller purchases, they either have to identify an S3BC or MWBE for award, or they have to complete a tracker, which documents the efforts that they made to look for one. And so this is actually, and we've been also tracking our results. So we do definitely see that, our policies and processes have, that we've implemented have definitely made a difference in this space. We, of course, on the larger, the larger procurements, we have, the requirement. Obviously, the vendors have the Section 3 requirements to meet the labor hour benchmarks, but at the same time, they have a requirement to subcontract to MWBEs. So vendors do understand that there is an expectation that they will be subcontracting. So again, there's another opportunity to kind of dovetail efforts for Section 3 business concerns and MWBEs. And we always like to remind our vendors that 100% of labor hours subcontracted to Section 3 business concerns count towards their benchmark. Next slide, please.
Text: for all open competitive procurements, NYCHA emails S3BCs and M/WBEs that perform relevant services to bid as a prime or collaborate for subcontracting opportunities. Attend a virtual pre-bid or pre-solicitation conference. View pre-bid attendance sheets with contact details on NYCHA's website if unable to attend. Vendors can also message other bidders through NYCHA's vendor-facing procurement system, iSupplier.
So, for all open competitive, procurement, we outreach for each procurement. We identify the right pool of Section 3 business concerns from our registry and also from our MWBE registry, which is actually not NYCHA's own registry, but the city's registry, but that's the one that, that we leverage. And by the way, both our own Section 3 business concern registry and the MWBE registry are brought into our labor compliance tool for vendors. So vendors have that, access to that within, our online tool. But we outreach to both groups. We encourage them to bid as prime or collaborate for subcontracting opportunities. We encourage them to attend virtual pre-bids. We have virtual pre-bids for pre-bid or pre-solicitation meetings or conferences for all of our open competitive solicitations. If they can't make them, we publish all of the sign-in sheets for all of those meetings online, which includes, the vendors that attended, their contact information, and whether or not, they're an MWBE or an S3BC. So it's easy for anyone that's looking for subcontracting opportunities to do outreach themselves. And they can also, while the solicitation is open, still out on the street, vendors have the ability to message, the other vendors that are, bidding or, preparing to bid on these open solicitations. And we point out all these things to our vendors, to our Section 3 business concerns and MWBEs, when we meet with them or we talk with them. Next slide, please.
Text: NYCHA established pre-qualified vendor lists, PQLs, for skilled trades. PQL vendors are reviewed and pre-approved for their qualifications in several trade areas. These vendors are then solicited when the need for the services arises. Trades include CCTV, lead-based paint, maintenance painting, carpentry, plumbing, electrical, janitorial, asbestos, elevators, floor tiling, and more to come. Micro PQL, a list of vendors pre-qualified for responsibility/integrity. A vendor must be approved on the Micro PQL to receive a micro purchase award of up to $10,000. NYCHA published all Section 3 and M/WBE program information on NYCHA's public vendor web pages. Published online: how to respond to a sealed bid.
So one of the things that NYCHA has been doing is establishing, pre-qualified lists. And we have a number of different pre-qualified lists. We have pre-qualified lists like based on trades. So we have one for electrician and carpentry and janitorial services and lead-based paint inspection and maintenance painting and a few others. We also have, and these are pre-qualified lists for vendors based on their trades. We also have a list for responsibility for micro-purchase vendors. Now, establishing these lists is work to maintain these lists, but it does save, all the time down the line when vendors are pre-qualified. And so not everything has to be done, in the critical path or in the moment of each individual solicitation. But one of the things that this has allowed us to do is create lists. And on these lists, we're able to, so we built, reporting tools internal for our NYCHA staff, including, Power BI dashboards, where we pull all this information together, whether or not the vendor is a Section 3 business concern, an MWBE, and whether or not they're pre-qualified for, responsibility on the micro PQL or a trade. And this way we can really help facilitate NYCHA staff who are requesting procurements, especially under the, the smaller dollar amounts, to identify and select the MWBEs and the Section 3 business concerns. So this is a way, to encourage that first Section 3 and MWBE first policy that I had mentioned previously. And I mentioned here about, how we published like a guide about step-by-step how to respond to one of our solicitations. That's probably belonged, in the previous slide, but that's something that we put together to make it easier for our vendors, particularly newer vendors who are not used to doing business with NYCHA, how to actually step through and make sure they submit a responsive bid. Next slide, please.
Text, launching in 2024 Comply. Section 3 and M/WBE compliance software that will enable NYCHA to allow proposers to submit Section 3 and M/WBE plans or commitments online for each solicitation. For contracted vendors, capture Section 3 labor hours via certified payroll submissions and other means, and track payments by prime vendors to subcontractors. Monitor Section 3 and M/WBE performance on a per-contract basis and across the portfolio.
So I mentioned this, we launched a new tool. A couple years ago, we launched it for certified payroll, but this is an important point where, we, like everybody else, we're struggling with getting vendors to submit their, PDF forms reporting their labor hours. Collecting Section 3 labor hours and even higher, dates through payroll reports, that's also a way, to get two types of information with one effort by the vendor. So we've been collecting Section 3 labor hours through payroll submissions for about 1.5 years now. And this year we've expanded the system. Last year we introduced the S3BC registry in this same system. And now this year we're expanding the capabilities so that vendors could submit, like I said, Section 3 and REO plans and OEO plans, and also the MWBE plans, and then also all of their prevailing wage labor hours and non-prevailing wage labor hours. That's what's new with this latest rollout, and also beginning next year, payments to MWBE subs. So we've consolidated all of that in one system, and hopefully, I still know that we'll have a lot of work to do to make sure that we're keeping our contractors, in compliance, but at least we'll be in a position to have data, information, visibility into what's happening, and we'll be able to be more targeted with our outreach and with our follow-up on our vendors. Next slide, please.
Text, outreach events and office hours. NYCHA conducts regularly scheduled, virtual office hours for S3BCs and M/WBEs. The sessions usually have a target audience and cover topics like how to register to do business with NYCHA, where to find procurement opportunities, the importance of attending pre-bid conferences, and various guides and resources. NYCHA Business Pathways Series, 10 to 15-week immersive free business education programs that teach NYCHA residents how to lead profitable food, construction and home-based childcare businesses. NYCHA's recent vendor diversity departments work closely together to provide graduates of the program with assistance and support to complete their S3BC registration and M/WBE certification process. Work closely with NYCHA's Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability (REES) department to train, support, and register vendor graduates of programming, including the Construction Business Pathways Program. Hold ad hoc, one-on-one meetings with S3BC and M/WBE vendors as needed and as time permits.
When I was reviewing this slide, I realized the one thing that we did not put on the slide was the live events we do. So we do, in addition to everything I'll tell you about here, we also do 2 live events a year. And again, like I said earlier, we do our events are no longer Section 3 events or MWBE events; they're Section 3 and MWBE events. So we invite everybody. And I think one thing that's proven successful for us is that for these live events, we always try to have a focus. So it's not just a whole wide open event with a bunch of tables and a bunch of people walking around. So for example, in our most recent event, we targeted our PACT program, which is a RAD, a federal RAD, and we focused on that pool of developers, and we invited businesses there to talk to the developers, and we gave some important information about our PACT program. So on top of that, we do office hours, virtual office hours, which is a good way to make the most of limited resources. I mentioned this right when I got on. We collaborate very closely with I'll say Reese, but that's Laura and Lanice. That's the Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability program or department, sorry, here at NYCHA. And they're the department that works closely with contractors and connecting them to residents and connecting residents to opportunities. So, here in procurement, more on the compliance side, the more we work closely with them, the more we integrate our activities, the better success we see and the better outcomes we see. So they have a lot of programming to support residents, whether through employment or business, developing their own businesses. So we do collaborate with them. We present at their events. They have workshops, and they have actual programming, like multi-week programming, and so we try to collaborate with them and speak to graduates, help them to register, and yeah, we just have to work closely with them because I think that's what we'll see better outcomes. And I think, yeah, we also do, like I mentioned, we also do ad hoc one-on-one. We're always here to help or support. It's good for vendors to have a place to outreach to, outside of an event or a meeting. So is that the last slide, or is there one more?
Another slide appears. It reads, documenting outreach efforts. Outreach efforts for solicitations are maintained as part of the procurement record. Vendor diversity generates lists, procurement sends emails, and event tools like MS Bookings document invites and attendance. First policy trackers used to document outreach to S3BCs and M/WBEs for micro and small purchases. Commitment to diversity RFP qualitative evaluation criteria whereby proposers earn points for the strengths of their Section 3 and M/WBE utilization plans and a diversity questionnaire to ensure objective scoring. Long-term initiatives include mentorship programs, with NYCHA exploring a JOC-based program and participation in a city or NYS program. Dedicated staff and resources will manage and monitor these efforts.
Documenting outreach efforts. I know this. I saw when we did this quiz earlier that everybody has a problem with this. When we do for each solicitation, that becomes outreach to Section 3 business concerns and MWBEs. That becomes part of the procurement record. We can always call that up. We use tools like Microsoft Bookings for meetings and stuff, and so we're able to track who we outreach to, and then later on by teams whether they attended. We have our tracker that our first policy tracker that requesters inside of NYCHA are required to fill out. Yep, and then we have other, longer term efforts in the way, like mentorship, and through that programming and those efforts, we'll be able to document. And naturally, through eComply, we're maintaining a record of contractor compliance, whether it's from the plan at the outset or later on with their submissions, their labor hour, or economic opportunity outcomes.
Annalyn appears once more.
And I think it's one last slide of making the most of little with limited resources.
Okay, we will do that very quickly. We're running a little low on time, so we'll do that and then we'll turn it over back to Sonae.
Text, suggestions for organizations with limited capacity. Generate targeted vendor lists and conduct targeted outreach. Use of free event management software and MS bookings, ease of interaction, flexibility, and improved tracking. For each event or session, continued and sustained outreach. All information posted on event site or online on NYCHA's public web pages. Use of websites, software, MS tools like booking and forms helps us to accomplish more with a smaller team. Publish S3BC outcomes/success stories, Toro Construction Services, share vendor perspective. M/WBE outcomes, above 30%.
Okay, so really quickly, I'll just say, I know we all have limited resources, so, using tools is really very, very helpful, like MS Bookings, where, you can put that out and you don't have to follow up so much individually with vendors, and you can really make the most of setting up meetings, especially if it's multi-sessions. Putting things on websites. I know developing FAQs is a lot of work, but once you do that, you have a place for vendors to go, and you don't have to answer so many individual questions. And I think with that, I will, happy to answer questions later, and I'll turn it over to Sonae from HACLA. Thanks for your time.
Sonae appears in her video call tile. Her slide once again has the HACLA logo. Text, business outreach events. Partnerships with the city and county on business outreach events in the city. Small Business Week. Public-private partnerships to identify contracting opportunities. Procurement fairs. Partnerships with local organizations and entities such as economic centers, Chamber of Commerce, etc. HACLA vendor and procurement trainings.
Thank you, Guy. So we have established partnerships with various organizations for our Section 3 and maybe WeBe outreach, and we do those throughout the year. We participate in business outreach events that are organized with the city or the county because we don't always have the resources ourselves to do it. So we are partnering with others and piggybacking out of those events. We're also partners with our local Chamber of Commerce, various business source centers, and Valley Economic Opportunity Centers and other organizations in the area that provide support for local businesses. So we go and participate in their events. And we also conduct our own internal procurement and contracting sessions similar to what my colleagues at NYCHA talked about. And we cover topics such as like vendor registration, contracting process, and accessing our open solicitations and the requirements. And Section 3 is a big part of these sessions. But we also hold specific Section 3 training events for our vendors. And usually these Section 3 training events are scheduled around the same time that when their labor hour compliance reports are due, to make it easier for them to understand the requirements, to have a refresher before they submit their labor hour benchmark reports. Next slide, please.
Text, building and updating Section 3 database. Section 3 business certification form. Section 3 and MBE/WBE business registry, identifying such businesses from bids/proposals. Identifying such businesses at business outreach events. Requiring all project subs to submit Section 3 business certification form. Existing vendor database outreach.
And then we also do have a Section 3 business registry. We had one under the old rules. So then when the rules were changed, we just updated it. We reached out to every single business there and asked them to recertify under the new rule. We also looked at the HUD registry and certified those Section 3 businesses from HUD registry who were local to our region under our own registry. And then we just continuously update our database. Our database is posted on our website. We update it on a monthly basis. and we continuously add or delete Section 3 businesses from the list if they are no longer recertifying, if they say that they no longer qualify. And the way we add more Section 3 businesses to our database is just through these business outreach events that we participate throughout the year, and also from the bids and proposals that we receive when we are putting out solicitations. In our solicitation packages, we include a Section 3 economic opportunity plan, something similar that Nature talked about, and also a Section 3 business certification form. So even if that business is not awarded the contract, if they were a Section 3 business in their proposal, then we extract that document from their proposal, we review it, we verify that information, and if we are able to certify them, then we do certify and add them to our database. And we use that database to contract out directly under HACLA contracts with Section 3 businesses, and also to notify our contractors and developers about the registry so they can use that as a resource to subcontract with Section 3 businesses. We also do our Section 3 vendor registration as a method to outreach with Section 3 businesses and certify them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura from Idaho Housing and Finance.
Laura's slide appears, again with the Idaho Housing and Finance Association logo. It reads, Conducting Outreach. IHFA provides the SBA Dynamic Business Search as a method for outreach. Each developer identifies the outreach methods feasible for the project location. An image on the slide shows a page of mostly illegible black, blue, and red text, divided into sections called Notifications, Location of Profile, and Government Certificates. The Location of Profile section has a lengthy drop-down and other blank fields. The Government Certificates section has numerous prompts with checkbox options.
Thank you, Sonny. What you're seeing here is that dynamic business search. And when the opportunity portal kind of came down, not that we had a whole lot of businesses that were on there, but we were looking for another way to do some kind of search method where we could help our partners identify businesses to solicit bids from. And our partners at HUD said, hey, you should check this wonderful site out. And so this is one of the methods that we provide to our partners to do some of that outreach. I know that in Idaho we've had limited success. I think the struggle is getting small contractors to certify themselves on these websites. But I think that's why we primarily focus on self-certification through our forms. But I did want to put this out there. It is a great tool that is out there to kind of mention out to all of our contractors if they're looking to get noticed, if they're looking for opportunities. Take a look at that website because I think that's a great tool if we could all start using it.
Andolin appears again.
All right. Laura, thank you so much. If you will stay on, we're going to skip right into your next segment. And we're going to have you continue and go ahead and talk about your vendor training.
Text, Vendor Training. IHFA invited all developers to Section 3 training, applicability. General definitions. Section 3 workers/targeted Section 3 workers. Benchmarks. Qualitative efforts. Forms. Pre-construction call training, review expectations from approved developer plan. Review forms with general contractor and answer questions.
Sure. When the new rule came out, we quickly decided that what we wanted to do was meet with all of our partners, our developers, who we've been working with for years, and go over Section 3, identify those definitions, let them know where this applies, what this is going to mean to them. This is really important when they're deciding to apply for funding, and they need to know what they need to do to meet our requirements. And I think this came out in November of 2020, and our round is once a year in about the middle of the year, but we wanted to give them plenty of time to get a developer plan together to understand the benchmark goals and what they were going to need to do up front to apply with enough time to actually be relevant for what the requirements are. So we hosted, I think it was 5 or 6 webinars where I talked at length about the requirements. We talked about what qualitative efforts were going to look like. We talked about the forms we were going to start asking them for. Following that, we have hosted pre-construction calls with all of our developers and general contractors, again, reviewing those expectations, reviewing the forms that we're requiring, talking to them about the developer plan that they submitted, verifying the efforts that they are either going through and or are working on at the time of the calls, and then following up with them, you know, through the course of the construction as they put in those draw requests, submitting those forms and kind of working with them really closely to provide training to them along the way to make the process really smooth. I think one of the things that I'm excited about too is we're talking about trying to put together uh, other types of training videos where we can walk through our forms and they can access that on their own schedules. So not necessarily requiring us to get on the phone and walk everyone through that, but we're talking about other training methods to provide them the content to help them be able to pass that along to their partners and kind of streamline the vendor training.
Text, Forms and Tools. IHFA encourages developers and contractors to complete Section 3 annual income certification forms early in the process, update annually, as applicable, when income limits are updated. Contractors fill out and submit the labor hour certification forms to developers. Developers then compile the labor hours into the Section 3 tracking spreadsheet and submit to IHFA for review, as identified in the developer plan.
Yep, forms and tools. Again, we encourage our developers to complete their annual income certification forms. That's annual because HUD does change some of the numbers based on, you know, updated income information annually. So we give them the forms and we say, hey, take a look at this, get it done early, identify who is and who isn't a Section 3 worker. Are they a targeted Section 3 worker? This will help you fill out those labor hour certification forms that we require to start processing draws. Um, you know, and then for our developers to compile, we have a tracking spreadsheet where they can take these certified hours from the contractors and pull it all together so that it makes it easy for us to kind of track on a monthly or per draw basis. That kind of keeps it all together, and spreadsheet is great for pulling those numbers together to tell us where we are at with our benchmarks. That kind of gives everybody that snapshot of where we're at in the process, and you know, keeps us all informed, I guess, is what we're going for here. Andalyn?
Thank you so much, Laura. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Soné to talk about vendor training that HACLA does.
Soné reappears with a HACLA slide. It says, vendor training. Offered several times during the year, often coinciding with labor hour benchmark reporting deadlines. Platform to communicate with vendors and explain Section 3 regulations and HACLA's policy and expectations. Review of HUD requirements, labor hour benchmark goals and how to calculate the hours. Review how to complete the forms. Opportunity to hear from vendors and change HACLA practices, when feasible.
Soné?
Thank you. Yes. So I personally am a strong believer in training and sharing information and educating both our internal teams and also our contractors and developers. And I start early because the better they know, the more they know, the easier it is our job to track their compliance efforts. You heard from Kat earlier today. We work with Kat, and I'm just so glad to see individuals like Kat, and especially Kat, who are able to understand and embrace the intent of Section 3 and not just do the paperwork, but they understand why we're doing what we do. So I offer several trainings throughout the year. Those can be large trainings with a group of individuals who are subject to submitting labor hour reports or just submitted bids and proposals, the pre-bid conferences, or one-on-one time. So I spend a lot of time with vendors, communicating with them, going over the forms with them, how to complete, because some of the smaller businesses have administrative challenges. They're not able to complete the forms as easy as we think they are. They're not easy and very understandable to them. So I go step by step over those forms and train them how to submit them, when to submit them, and it gives them an opportunity to ask us questions, so then we can internally assess, how we can be better, if we can reward some of the fields differently, so then they understand it better. And all of our forms and trainings, they have like either a guidance page or instructions tab if it's an Excel form, so then they can just go back and review the Section 3 worker definition, targeted Section 3 worker definition, the hiring priorities, etc. We also provide mapping tools for our contractors to identify the 1 mile radius for the project. And all of this is done throughout various and different trainings. We may even do like 1, 2, 3 trainings per project until the contractor feels comfortable. Next slide, please.
Text, collaborative partnerships with developers. Development agreements, negotiations and communication on importance of Section 3. Requirements to pass along all tier subs. Pre-construction conferences. Quarterly/monthly meetings on project status. Workforce groups to hold each other accountable.
And we do a lot of partnerships with our developers. We approach things differently for the contracts that are subject to under the public housing operating or capital funds, because those are like one-off contracts. But with developers, it's a longer term partnership. These negotiations and communication starts before signing any agreements. And then we want to make sure that they understand it well enough that they're able to pass those requirements up to their subcontractors. We hold pre-construction conferences. And also for these larger projects, we have quarterly or monthly meetings. All of the stakeholders are on these calls. We update each other on the project status. We review the numerical goals, the benchmarks where we are now, and identify any gaps, any issues that can be corrected at this point, instead of waiting at the very last minute when it's too late. One of the unique things about Section 3 is that once it's passed, it's passed. You can just not go back and fix the hours. So that's why we have continuous communication and efforts to fix things and to change our practices. On larger projects, we also have what we call workforce groups. These are several developers, local organizations, our WorkSource Center, and others. And we, again, collectively talk about challenges, the methods we use to be successful, and provide each other various resources to be successful. Andalyn, I'll turn it back over to you now.
Andalyn speaks from her video call tile. Text, resources. IHFA Section 3 resources, https://www.idahohousing.com/federal-program/section-3/ HACLA Section 3 resources, https://www.hacla.org/n/contracts-and-procurement/forms-and-documents-and-policies. https://www.hacla.org/n/contracts-and-procurement/section-3-worker-success-stories. NYCHA Section 3 resources, https://www.nyc.gov/site/NYCHA/business/section3.page. https://nycha.ecomply.us/public/section directory. https://www.nyc.gov/assets/nycha/download/pdf/ecomply/s3bcguide.pdf. https://opportunity.nycha.org/job-opportunities/section-3-information/ https://www.nyc.gov/site/nycha/business/section3-FAQs.page.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our speakers for coming on today. I know we had a jam-packed session today, lots of great information. Um, and I apologize, we were not able to get to Q&A today. We definitely wanted to. Please know that responses to the questions that were put in the Q&A will be emailed. So we're going to get your questions answered. That's really important to us and to get those to you. Just want to quickly go over the resources. I know that they were dropped in the chat earlier, but there are some really great resources here. We've discussed before Idaho Housing Finance Association's website. Their Section 3 resources are really great. HACLA's website, they have forms, policies, and they even have some Section 3 worker success stories. So really great information there. NYCHA has their Section 3 directory. They have a small Section 3 business guide, and they also have Section 3 FAQs. So really great information is there as well.
Text, SBA Small Dynamic Business Search, https://dsbs. sba.gov/search/dsp_dsbs.cfm. HUD Section 3 Resources, https://www.hud.gov/section3. HUD Exchange Section 3 Resources, https://www.hudexchange.info/program/section-3/. Do you have technical Section 3 questions? Ask a Section 3 question. https://www.hudexchange.info/program-support/my-question/. Do you need more in-depth technical assistance? Request in-depth program assistance. https://www.hudexchange.info/program-support/technical-assistance/.
Make sure to check out the SBA, the Small Business Administration Small Dynamic Business Search. It's a really great tool and can really be helpful to you. And as always, there are lots of great resources on HUD.gov and on the HUD Exchange. If you need a little bit more assistance, you can ask a question through the Section 3 Ask a Question desk on the HUD Exchange. And if you need a little bit more in-depth technical assistance, then you can request that on the HUD Exchange as well. All right, and thank you all for attending. Our final session in this series is tomorrow, so please join us tomorrow for our final webinar on this. Okay, thank you everybody, and have a great day.
The final slide says, Unlocking Section 3 Potential. Thank you for attending. In a photo on the slide, a helmeted man wields a hammer, climbing up an unfinished roof.